Hello and welcome to the English Folk Dance and Song Society and to Folk, a new series of conversations with folk talking about folk. My name is Katy Spicer and I am the Chief Executive and Artistic Director of the English Folk Dance and Song Society, and I'm delighted to be joined today by members of Folk Dance Remixed, which is an associate company of the English Folk Dance and Song Society. So let me introduce to you Kerry Fletcher, who is the co-founder and co-artistic director of the company, Natasha Khamjani, who is the other co-founder and co-artistic director of the company, Frank Wilson, who is a company member, and Krupa Chavda, who is another company member. Lovely, welcome all. So maybe I could start with Kerry and Natasha, and you could just tell us a bit more about the company and how it got started and what it's all about, etc., etc. Whoever would like to start.
Kerry, you go first.
Okay, I'll go first, only because I think I was the first one to talk about it in the very, very beginning. So it started with actually Polly Risbridger, who's the creative producer at East London Dance. She wanted to do a project that was looking at folk dance, and it was her name. In fact, Folk Dance Remix was her name for a festival that kind of morphed into other things. And one of the things it morphed into was talking to me about folk dance. The wonderful Rachel Elliott, the education director there at EFTAS, put me in touch with Polly, and then Polly thought Natasha's going to be a fantastic person to work with Kerry, so they put us together. And the original idea was for a workshop called Street Dance the Maypole, which we still do 10 years later. We still do. So Street Dance the Maypole was about trying to find ways to make the maypole come alive again, but in a more contemporary way, really, using street dance ideas around a maypole to make the maypole really exciting. And that's what we started with, wasn't it, Natasha? And we met in the garden at Cecil Sharp House.
Yes, we met in the garden 10 years ago, and as Kerry started to show me stuff, I was just thinking, oh my God, there's just so much you could do with the patterning of the maypole, the music, and we can put, current music to it and we can remix it. And then she started showing me these clogging steps, and I was like, oh, they look really similar to house dance steps. And then I guess out of that, we started to, we kind of developed this workshop package. We tested it out at the Barbican and another school called Star Primary. They're our first couple of workshops. And then we started to meet once a week and just dream up bigger ideas, and thought, well, nobody will ever pay for it because we need quite a lot of people and it's not sure. But because we'd kept on meeting, when the opportunity arose from Polly, who's now the Chief Executive Artistic Director of East London Dance, it was Kiki Gale actually before that who was really investing as well, wanted to keep us going. But when the opportunity arose to develop the idea from money from the Big Dance Legacy Trust Fund, is that right, Kerry?
Yeah, that's right.
There was a pot of money that East London Dance wanted to gift to us, which was amazing. Also amazing because we were ready. We were like, oh, well, actually, boom, we'd been planning a meeting and had loads of ideas. And then in that week's R&D, which Frank and I think Krupa, you were both part of that original members 10 years ago. Well done for keep going. We had so many ideas, and the Arts Council came to see it. They're like, you must put in a bid and get this up and off the road. And I don't know, Kerry, if you want to jump back in, or if Katy, if that's enough of a beginning for you.
Yeah, tell us perhaps. Well, let's first of all let's go over to Frank and Krupa, and then we might come back to hear a bit more about what the sort of, I suppose, ethos of the company is. What your aims and objectives are. But perhaps starting with Frank, how did you get involved with the company?
Natasha's my partner.
Ah, strong-armed,
yeah,
strong-armed, no choice.
No choice. Yeah. But
I also said he'd be perfect for the role.
Yeah, I'd say personally, like I think the idea is, yeah, it's a definitely interesting idea, and I had no idea. Well, the only ideas I had ever had about folk was just a whole Morris dancing and jumping around a pole, with like, you know, girls with like, you know, flowers around their head, you know, just, you know, the ignorant, I'd say the ignorance of folk, really, in a sense. And the there was things that, like, you know, bothered me that I used to see as well, which, I mean, later on down in this conversation we can talk about, but there was other things that I saw folk which didn't really draw me to that. There was there's some parts of it that was interesting, but there's other parts that wasn't necessarily interesting. But, you know, that's, I suppose, is of the old, isn't it? You know, it's an old tradition, which in a sense needed to be brought forward, and needed to include the people from people that settled in this country. Do you know what I mean? And become part of this country. So it needed to have all of those people involved in it as well. Which, you know, I suppose, you know, when you're talking about folk dance anyway, that's something that happens everywhere in the world. In every country, they have their own typical traditions when it comes to music and dance, you know. But anyway, yeah, we'll talk about it later, I suppose. But that's my introduction.
Definitely. Let's come back to that, because I want to talk about that sort of evolution of folk and so forth in this country. And Krupa, what about you? How did you get involved with Folk Dance Remixed?
I met Natasha, I must have been like 15 years old or something, in a youth company at East London Dance. She taught me there, just kept in touch. And then I think 2013 she got in touch with me, and I did that first R&D and absolutely loved it, because I felt like I could incorporate the folk that I know, which is the Indian side, into this new sort of English style of folk that I was learning. And like some of the steps do coincide with each other, and I think I've got a massive interest in live music, so I loved that aspect of it, but also having that sort of hip hop street dance style to it as well, because I felt like all those different things is part of like who I am, so it kind of mixed everything in really, really nicely. So I just thought it was like the best vibe, and everybody that was there is so happy and positive. So yeah, it was great. I enjoyed it, and I was like sucked in then. I was like, I want to be part of this, and yeah, I still am. Yay!
Yes, 10 years. I'm staggered. It's that long ago. It really does only seem like, you know, a few years ago, a handful of years ago, since, as you say, that original project took place with East London Dance, and here we are 10 years on. So Kerry, you're out of obviously all of the people here, you're the one we would probably call the folky. You're the one that has certainly been working in the sector as an artist, as a teacher, organizer, all-round amazing person. But how did you originally get into folk? Why folk music and folk dance?
Oh, thanks, Katy. Yeah, now that's my mum, Dixie Fletcher, as she was then. She ran a folk club in the 1970s, a very good folk club, of course. Spawned the likes of the Oyster Band and Chris Wood and yeah, some great people. And great people came. She used to do swaps, like she'd book Martin Simpson if another club would book a Fiddler's Dram. And so there was a lot of music in the house, a lot of people, a lot of dancing as well. We used to have ceilidhs all the time. The music and the dance were very mixed together. And then I was a teenager and I became a Morris dancer, of course, a Cotswold Morris dancer with Oyster Morris. Although I led a double life because I was also a disco dancer. Natasha and Frank and Krupa, it was already there. The kind of I should have been a street dancer really, but I stuck with the Morris. So this double life was going on for me. So yeah, I was really lucky from the age of about 9. I was brought up and there was always music and people in the house as well. So yeah, festivals and folk clubs and dances.
Yeah. But would I be right to say that the other three of you, in terms of engagement with English folk dance and music, this was probably one of your first sort of introduction or your major introduction of getting involved in this company, getting it off the ground? Natasha?
For me, for sure. When I walked into that garden, I'd never come across a maypole before. I'd seen pictures or the odd film or something on TV, but no, never. Hadn't done anything at school, not even I don't remember doing any country dancing or anything. Because I was always instigating street dance teens at my school. Like, let's put a show together, do it in assembly. So no folk. All those street dance is the folk of the day.
Yeah, yes. Well, that's very, very true, isn't it? So what was your, what was your sort of preconceptions of folk? Obviously, Frank's touched on that a little bit. We'll come back to that. But what was your sort of preconceptions of what, particularly folk dance, what English folk dance was all about?
I guess I hadn't even really thought about it, but I'd think about it in my head, guys in white with hankies and bells just
Yeah.
jumping about, and wouldn't really have taken it very seriously or been bothered about it at all.
Yeah, yeah,
Didn't come into my life. I was all about hip hop, street dance, hip hop theatre work, and pop videos. That was my whole focus for a long time. Was I wanted to be in a pop video.
yeah. Have you done that?
Pardon?
Have you done that? Have you had your ambition?
I've done a few. I mean, Krupa and Frank obviously have done a lot more than me, but I've done my fair share.
Good, good. Well, I'm glad that ambition did happen. I'm glad. And Krupa, what about you? Was this really? You talked about obviously traditional dance and so of your own, but what about English folk dance? Was this your first sort of real introduction? And what were your preconceptions of English folk dance before you started working with FDR?
Similar to Tash, like I basically only thought English folk dance was Morris dancing. I had no other concept of any other English folk dance before I met Kerry and we started doing steps. Like I didn't know what clogging was. I had no idea. So it opened my eyes to a whole different community of dance, which I didn't even know actually existed, which was amazing because I was like, it's great that there's a whole community out there of everyone that loves and enjoys folk dance. So that was basically all I thought folk dance was. So my eyes were definitely opened by learning the new dances and seeing it. There's
Yeah.
so many similarities to like Indian folk dance, and that's why it really like shocked me that there's something else out there with a similar, basically that's that similar to it. So
Mm.
yeah,
Yes, all the
that's
foot
amazing.
percussive elements of dance, isn't it? Yeah. And Frank, you touched on that earlier, but what about yourself in terms of, as I say, those sort of preconceptions of, or what
Well,
you thought English folk was all about, or how
well,
it was coming across?
in the 70s, like I'd been in places where there were Morris dancers, so I had seen it, like men with like bells in their legs and doing the whole dance and stuff. I mean, and seeing a maple, I'd seen it, in person, but yeah, there was an ignorance to it, and I'd seen other things, like I'd seen people with painted faces, black faces, stuff like that, which you know didn't really make me feel too happy, sort of thing. But like that was my only perception of like a folk dance, really. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Very white orientated, not very mixed in that sense. Yeah, that was my thing. But like coming into this, yeah, I had to come with an open mind at the end of the day. I mean, for me, like in street dance or Jamaican traditions which is what I come from. There, our dances are called social dances. I mean, when we associate like a movement, like that everybody does, it all comes under social dances. Even with street dance now, from hip hop, from b-boying to locking, popping. There's social dances. There's things there's styles that it came from, and it goes all the way back to jazz and to back to right back to slavery. When they used to mock or take the mickey out of the slave masters, like the walks and stuff that they used to do. I can't actually remember the names of it. I think Kerry will know a bit about that. Maybe not. But yeah, as I said, we call them social dances. And there's a definite link. I mean, for folk dance, it's a street dance style at the end of the day because it comes from the people. It's the people, like there's not the working class people that came up with the styles, came up with the movement, not necessarily the royal courts or anything like that. Just like ballet started like in the streets, and then it got taken into the courts, and then it became this classical style of dance. But it's a traditional folk dance style, really, which is where all of this comes from. It's all one.
Yeah.
I just think the ignorance. If we get rid of the ignorance and we sit down, we talk, and then we share things, and we'll realize how connected it is. Like the little Indian steps, which is in b-boying, which is in folk, which is in which is an Indian style dance. I don't know what tribe it is from, but it is a actual footstep, you know. And if you go back to Africa, you'll see the same thing. Like, you know, there's a style, one of the youngest styles in street dance, I'd say, would be house. It's quite old. We're talking about over 30 years old, but it's quite a new style when it comes to street dance. And yet when you look in the styles and the footwork and that, it goes into jazz. But then also if you look into the styles of African footwork, you'll see a lot of it in there as well. Do you know what I mean? So everything is everything, you know?
Jump in there and say that I did a project when I first left college with Jennifer Jean Charles and Pearl Jordan called Bullies Ballerinas, and it was called Barefoot and Crazy Legs, and it literally looked at all the African dance steps and how they link through to the Charleston and tap dancing to swing to now to street dance. And that was one of the most amazing projects I've ever done to this day. I remember like so much of what we did, it still comes into the work I teach now. So yeah, I think they put that online as a resource now, but that was a really interesting project to be part of. Just like Frank said about just everything's derived from folk steps from many years ago and how it's all just regenerated and refreshed, and you know, that's what Folk Dance Remixed, our company, has spent a lot of time doing. Not just doing Morris steps and house steps, but actually how can we fuse some of those actually together. So we've put locking with Morris, we've put clogging with house. Maypole you can do anything round because all you need to do is travel. So we've got b-boying in there, and yeah, many different styles all fusing together, which is a really beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Can I jump in there as well?
Please, Kerry, yes.
Go on from Frank and Natasha. I think what we feel we're doing, because I was also really equally excited about, those house steps are really similar to a clogging step, and it's like I think we felt like we were squishing some time. So when different people spend time together, the culture and the traditions don't know any boundaries, do they? They don't. They just go into people and go, oh yeah, I like that, and they start to get fused. And I think we felt like we could do that consciously. And in the past, that might have happened over like 100 years. It might have become a tradition of Appalachian clogging, or, you know, a particular kind of Indian dance maybe that's got traditionally influences from folk dances from before, as Frank was saying. And I think we felt like we were just gonna squish this and really see what we could make happen with our conscious love of where it comes from. So not just throwing that away. So it's not becoming just a mushy soup. It's more like a salad. You can taste all the bits as well.
It's important anyway, isn't it? Like, you know, if you look at, like, if you think about where folk dance comes from, or, you know, the folk tradition comes from, it comes from a tradition. And if any country you go to, like, you know, I mean, I grew up watching Wildlife, David Attenborough and all sorts of things like that. And when I used to go to tribes in Africa or Asia or China, like, you know, the indigenous people, like, you know, the people that still use the old ways, they always taught, like, you know, they taught the old ways. It, you know, every generation taught the old ways onto the next generation coming along. So it's not something that you just do lightly. Like, you know, a problem we have with street dance, I would say, is that, like, you know, you get teachers teaching children sexual dances, and unfortunately, they have no meaning apart from being sexual.
Yeah.
Where if you look into the past of sexual dances, like, and when I mean that, I'm talking about hip movement. Hip movement, gyrating movements, and that there was always a meaning behind it. So, like, you know, to do with birth, to do with crops, to do with what's it called? You know, when the crops have grown and when they're going to be
Harvested.
Yeah. All of these things came with that. So when you saw, like, you know, you see a Hawaiian women do their movements, there's something behind it. It's just like, I'm doing my hips and, like, you're going to think I'm sexy and that's it. There's more to it than that. Where within street dance, unfortunately, with certain styles, we're teaching our children this, but there's no meaning behind it.
Yeah.
With the folk and with these original traditions was that with any movement that we teach our children, there's something behind that comes with it as well, which that's the only thing I'd say which has been lost. But then that comes with, you know, television and, you know, people just jumping in the hype and not really looking at what's really behind what these kids are doing. You know what I mean? Because if you go into like, you know, the pioneers of these styles in street dance, you will find that there are meanings behind what they do. But unfortunately, you know, when hype comes, with hype comes the ignorance, and people are just doing it because it's cool and not because there's more to it. You know, hip hop is a way of life. You know what I mean? Just like folk is a way of life, but it's forgotten now because the television and all this is involved. And rather than like do the depth and do the understanding of it, they're just doing the whole, oh, this is cool, you got to look at this because this is what's happening now, sort of thing.
Yeah. Definitely. I think again what you were all saying, it's this very interesting this thing of we, you know, it is recognized sort of by, you know, researchers and so forth and academics that both folk dance and folk music, you know, is not created in a one country silo or one region of a country silo. It is so influenced by, you know, migration and so forth. And we know how so much, you know, particularly in terms of the music side, has, you know, come from the British Isles, it's gone over to America, it's come back from America to here, as well as, you know, as you say, the influences on dance from European customs, from African customs, Asia, as well as back to the Americas. But why, I'll just throw this out to you, I suppose, why, knowing that, as I say, there are all these influences, there are all these similarities, there are all these crossovers with dance and with the music in traditions across the world, that we, certainly in this country anyway, in England, you know, we do silo it. We silo sort of everything, and as a result, it feels that, you know, certainly traditional folk dances, whether they're described as English or they're more British Isles or they're more wider from around the world, you know, do get sort of sidelined or just don't get taught. And as Frank was saying, they don't get taught or they get taught but without that background and the understanding. Frank, jump in there.
Yeah, silo, what does that mean?
Oh, in the sense of, you know, we just channel in a little box and we ignore everything else around it.
Would you not say that's just like ignorance and like, you know, wanting, you know, this is ours sort of thing, where like, you know, like I said before, it's like, you know, there are traditions, but sometimes people just forget. They forget or they're not taught. It's like even in street dance in this country, this country for street dance is one of the, I'd say in Europe is one country that they don't remember who came before them. If I go to France and I talk to dancers that do hip hop or lock, whatever it is they do, they can talk to you about the people that came before them. They can talk about the history of it. Obviously, the history of these styles I'm talking about come from America, but at the end of the day, you got to talk about your homegrown stuff, right? So you got to talk about where you're from and how it came about to be where you are from. So there's people that came before you. Over here, it's not like that. So a lot of these youngsters, they think the way they go on, it's like, oh, it started from me. And it doesn't start from there. So I think it's a thing of like, you know I do it. It's just we need to talk. We need to talk to the youngsters. We need to talk to each other and spread the love. Do you know what I mean? So, and I'd say the same thing with this, with folk and like, you know, these different styles. Everyone wants to stay separate, where it's like, it's not like that really. You know, if you're open-minded, like, you know, I listen to all types of music. Anything that touches my soul, it touches me. Therefore, I listen to it, you know, from Joni Mitchell to, you know, the Gong, George, well, not George Michael. It's not my favorite kind of person really, but yeah, yours, George Clinton, Led Zeppelin, you know, like, you know, my range of music, you know, flamenco, you know, my range of music is wide, but like, you know, as I said, if it touches me, then it touches me, and then I want to know about it and I want to hear it. But and if you talk to certain hip hop DJs, they'll say the same thing to you. Then the music is not straight hip hop, and like, you know, and it can't be, because with hip hop we use other types of music to make what we do, what is done.
So just jumping back into Katie's question to steer it back,
I'm losing it. Sorry.
I'm
fine.
I'll drop it down to Krupa to get her opinion. But I feel like you're saying, in a way, why in England have those traditions not been carried on as popularity? No, that's the wrong word. As popular in other traditions. And I suppose if you ask me really, really honestly why, you could look at some other traditional folk dances that have got maybe male and females, adults dancing together. It's kind of really patterny. I suppose when you look at the Morris dancing, right off the top of my head, you just think, what is that? What are they doing? Until you actually learn it and see how hard it is and understand the tradition and look at those intricate patterns, you could look at it and go, well, it's not cool. It hasn't quite got the cool factor. Maybe it's the bells, maybe it's guys all being in white, maybe it's over the years, I don't know. I know I did the Olympics and they had like a comedy Morris group come in and everybody was laughing. It was like, and I was thinking, hang on a minute, I've learned a little bit about this. This is not quite right. And then, like what Frank was saying, and Krupa, you think about the maypole, you think about little girls in white dresses with flowers, and I honestly think that's one of the reasons why this company still stands, is because people are going, oh, I didn't know you could do that with the maypole, and I see how you're mixing the styles up there with the Morit. Oh, right. And then company members, and I'll hand to Krupa, who've come in, can tell you how it feels to learn Morris. So Krupa, how does it feel to learn Morris?
Yeah, I mean, they make it look so easy, but when we actually learned the steps, I was like, wow, it's really intricate and really energetic because you have to stay in the air for longer. And like some of the steps, there's like massive lunges and things like that. So it's not easy, but learning it as a dancer, you really do appreciate it. And also, I think one of the things was before I joined the company, I didn't feel like it was inclusive in the sense of like when I used to watch Morris dance or when I used to watch maypole dancing. I don't think I've ever seen a maypole dance live, but I've seen like videos and things. I just felt like I'm not allowed to join in. Like I don't know why, but I never saw anyone that looked like me doing it. So that's why I never ever thought I'm fine doing it because I didn't think there was anywhere I could go to do it or or like obviously with Morris dancing, I had only ever seen men do it. I don't think before the company I'd ever seen women do it. So then that's sort of
No,
in
I've
my head, I
never.
was like, can't do that either, can I? So like, so
yeah,
I think like coming into folk dance remix, it really opened my eyes, and it's like I feel like I now know I have a place in folk in some way, shape, or form.
yeah.
Yeah.
Kerry, do you want to come in here as you know, as our folky one on some of this?
That's music to my ears, Krupa, and Frank as well. You know, it's like, and Natasha, you know, didn't have that experience before, and now we're all like, yes, let's do it, let's change perceptions. And I think that has been one of our driving forces as well, hasn't it, Natasha? It's been like, and also changing perceptions of street dance and hip hop culture as well. That you know, and I'm sure Frank will have something to say about this as well. You know, it's not the idea that there's any gang culture or any of the more negative aspects that some people say, oh, it's all done in the dark streets at night and everything. It's like, it's folk dance. It's folk dance. People are dancing on the street just like Morris dancers, and you know, people are connecting and they're sharing their creations. They're sharing people who taught them. It's really important. I love what Frank's saying about understanding where you've learnt that from as well, and that hip hop's whole culture itself. I feel that's really strong and a really good thing to say, because it feels like that too. And so I do feel that what we're trying to do is it's in the work and it's in the company. I hope it's in everything that we do, is to change those perceptions. Sometimes we do it sneakily, like we do a Kaylee and people don't even know it's folk dancing. It's come up and join and dance with us and they don't even know it's folk dance, it's a Kaylee dance, it's a country dance. They have no idea. And then they go, wow, that's really fun, where's this from? And you go, well, that was an English country dance. And they go, oh, I had no idea. And that's,
Can I just touch on that? That whole thing that you're saying there, they're just words, right? At the end of the day, they're just words that we use. Okay, me growing up, when like, you know, someone would say, I'm going to a dance, we used to say that's what the old people said. So when you watch those old school movies, oh, I'm going to a dance tonight. But then like when I became a teenager, that's what we said. Oh, I'm going to a dance. I'm going clubbing. You know, these words that we use, they're just words at the end of the day. And it's like a different generation takes it and makes it something else. You know what I mean? So when you're saying, like you're saying, the folk dance thing, it's all the same, man. It's like, you know, just folk people dancing, right? Yeah.
And you, I mean, obviously that what you're describing there is you know is the key reason that EFTAS has wanted you as an associate company and has tried to support as much as we could over the years, because of that, that mixing of those different traditions and modern traditions in form of the hip hop, and bringing it into, all those dances into the sort of 21st century, and engaging with that much wider cohort of people by doing it out in the street, by, as you say, by stealth, getting them involved and dancing themselves. And, the fact that, your company has been multicultural, and exactly what, Krupa was saying, looking at Morris dancers or Maypole dancers, that's not for me, and these are all obviously the perceptions, that we want to change, because folk dance, whether it's English folk dance or Scottish or from an African country or from an Indian country, it should be for anybody, really, shouldn't it? It should be, as you say, it's dance of the people. It should be there. But you're only a small group of people, relatively, going out and doing this. So how can we, I suppose, collectively, not just EFTAS and Folk Dance Remix, but what can we do to sort of encourage much more of this sort of dialogue, as Frank was saying, this much greater understanding of, where these original dances and music forms come from, but how they overlap with each other across continents and across centuries as well? How do we do that? Throwing that out to you.
Sounds like there's it sounds like I know you said it's not just Folk Dance Remix and EFTAS, but we do have the resources actually to put something together that then could be we've already started doing an online resource for some of the work we've been doing. But it feels like we can pull artists together from both sides and create a package almost that you could get other teachers via One Dance UK or whoever it is to come on a course or a virtual course for now. Or just have like weekends away, what do they call, residentials, where you could get, well, we could have done, yes, we will eventually again.
For
me, I take it out, even if I'm booked in a school to do street dance, I'll often in a warm-up chuck a Katy in. If I work with actors in opera and singers, I'll chuck a Katy in, and often they like, can you do that again? When I come back, they want to do that before they want to do their stuff. So it's just, I don't know, educating other people on how much fun it can be. Basically, book us to do a film.
Do a film. Okay.
Research. I'd say research. There are companies that we've all worked with, like, there's Boy Blue. I know that, like, if I got into a conversation with Ken, he'd be really interested in doing this, along with certain other companies, folk as well, But like, just research, and if we do it right, we could create a program and take it into schools. I mean, Ken's already done that with street dance. It's the same with this. They're all the same movement as like, and it is important that this doesn't. It's not going to die, but that it bleeds out. Yeah. It's important that it bleeds out, and like as much as we bleed into folk, it needs to bleed out to other people to understand what this is. So tradition's important. Do you know what I mean? As long as and at the same time, sometimes with tradition we've got to let go of certain things. But and I in a sense, maybe that is why. I know from my point of view, that's something that kept me away from it and kept things separate, I suppose. So maybe that's part of it. But like, maybe that's what needs is just the research, the understanding of things, and just spreading the word.
Mm-hmm. And as Natasha's just said, how you just sort of automatically use it in your work, sort of almost like it's just another thing in your toolkit as a dance artist, as a teacher, as a choreographer. With Frank and Krupa, are you finding that now, having been working with the music and the dance for 10 years through the company, are you finding that you almost don't think about, oh, I'm doing a bit of English folk now? It's more sort of just part and parcel of the dance and the music language that you use as a professional artist. Krupa?
I feel like, I just use things that I've learnt from English folk dance and with Folk Dance Remixed, and I just use that in my practice. So I don't really separate it like, I'm teaching a Bollywood dance and then I'm doing this in my it's just it all follows through. So it's added to what I do, and actually people love it. If I don't label something, they
Yeah.
don't question it at all, and it's just part of what we're doing. And actually I feel like that's better, because once we start labeling everything and like this is this and that's that, it kind of like somebody could be like, oh, I don't like that style, and then there's an opinion already.
Yeah.
So I just don't say anything. I just let them do the exercise. I'm like, this is it, let's go. And then they don't question it, and they enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the stealth thing again, isn't it? And Frank, have you found that you just use
I
it,
think
don't think about it?
I think before this anyway, I think I naturally did that anyway. I've always
Mhm.
been I've come from a crew called Abstract when it came to hip hop, and we mix everything. So like, I mean, I've taught classes where people are saying, "Oh, that's contemporary," but then what is contemporary? You know. So for me, it's like, I've always my movement's always been it's been unique. I'm not barking my own thing, but it's always been quite unique, and I've been influenced from Asian styles, not necessarily Bollywood, but Asian style of dance. I mean, I remember I was in Indonesia, and I think there's quite similarities in the way they do their animation sort of head movements and stuff to pop in. So I've always taken little bits of things that I've seen, ballet, you know, anything into what I do myself anyway. So I think it's something that's I've naturally always done. Just in me doing folk dance, it's just added to that. And yeah, the same thing like Cooper. I mean, like there's moves that they've actually between Kerry and Natasha, what they've created, I've used and shown like house dancers, showed them certain movements that these guys have already made up through the folk and the house dancers. So like yeah, I've done that anyway. Yeah, so it's just added more
Yeah.
layers to what I do.
Great, thank you. So we're, I think, coming to the last few minutes, but so
Already?
tell us about what the company are planning. What's next for the company? Lockdown and COVID aside, what are you working on, guys? Kerry, kick
Well,
off.
we have managed to get out in front of Natasha and Frank's house a couple of times and do some live curbside Kaylee jams, which we've been adapting for solo dancers, which has been really good fun. And very glad to be making a film which will be coming out soon of a resource that we did in the beautiful Kennedy Hall. So that was really great, and that's given us lots of ideas for doing work that can be flexible. So we're putting together a grant at the moment, an Arts Council grant bid to hopefully be able to do some more curbside work based on the Kaylee jams, because they're the Kaylee dancing and social dancing, even if we can't hold hands at the moment, if we can make a flexible work that can be done during this time, and then when we can get closer and closer and finally hold hands, that would be fantastic. So it'll be based on that. And we went to Hammersmith, didn't we, Natasha, and danced outside family's home, and they came out on the other side of the street, and we got them all dancing together because they were together. And so keep on working, trying to get people together. And we've also got a bid into the PRS Foundation to develop the music as well with it, because it's always really important to us that the music it's integral to
Yeah.
the live music is absolutely integral, and trying to develop that, as Natasha was saying, not just here's the folk tune and here's the hip hop beat, just really trying to make those things together. Yeah, so we're working on those ideas, I think.
And
Yeah.
and Natasha, before lockdown, you were all working on this new production, Dust.
We were,
Where has that got to now? Because that sounded really fascinating.
we did a week of research and development, and we've got all we made that into a short film. So we have all that, and we have all the documentation, and it's kind of put on hold for now. But it is still on the cards for something we'd like to develop eventually. But everything's changed, so we're changing to change with it. So that keyword curbside entertainment, and the fact that we're an outdoor arts company anyway, has really played in our favour. And we, like Kerry said, we managed to do 5 gigs over the summer, and develop a whole new strand of work. The solo Kaylee thing is a great idea because, as Kerry said, you're not touching hands, but it doesn't mean you're not 2 meters away. You can still have a right laugh.
Yeah.
And you can. I was teaching yesterday for Garsington Opera, and we were doing the Polonaise, and I did still put some of folk dance remix stuff in it because we had to do a Polonaise on our own. I was like, Ugh. So I was like, oh, I'll wave to the Soul Train. Let's just put that in. So we started to do stuff I'd done with Kerry, Right Hand Star, but away from each other. But we're still laughing because we're still all looking at each other. So still a way to connect, even if it's not by the touch. There's still a way to help people's well-being, and the joyfulness of it's still there. Just because you can't touch, we can still see each other.
Yeah.
So doing stuff in person in the future is still a really good reality and a good way forward for us if we can make it work with this ever-changing climate. So hopefully we'll be able to do it next year. Who knows? Oh, and one other thing we talked about was we've still got our funding for Step Pop House, which we were meant to tour this summer, and it was like, how could we best use that next summer? So we've been talking about making a really high quality film of that piece, and how looking at all the risk assessments of how we would bring the company together, but like maybe using drones and have a really high quality film in the round and above of Step Pop House that would create some work for all of our company members in a safe way, but also means our work can go global, which is
That sounds amazing. That truly sounds amazing.
an exciting possibility for us. That means that out of a negative, our work could touch even more people if we get it right.
Yeah, lovely. Well, I think we need to wrap that up. Thank you so much. So huge thank you to Kerry, to Natasha, to Frank, and to Krupa, members of the Folk Dance Remixed. Thank you.